even though it's kind of a cruddy time in terms of the state budget, but I think it's time for some good, honest leadership. Folks who are willing to stand up for the right thing, even when it might be unpopular. And that's one of the things I appreciate about Governor Quinn, is that he's willing to be straightforward about the budget, about our needs as a state, and to stand up for, particularly for education. As a teacher myself, I teach at the law school down at SIU, and I just really appreciate someone who's willing to put his political capital on the line for all of our kids, all of our communities. I think that just is, that's the way I see the future of Illinois. I see that if we have a great education system that doesn't depend on the real estate tax base in which you grow up, then we're going to be attracting the kind of jobs that we want to Illinois. And that's extremely significant for me and for the governor and for everyone. I mean, this is a kind of touchy time, right? There are a lot of people who are wanting jobs, not just in general. I would like to have more jobs in the community, but boy, I think, I'm on the line next, that the next layoffs might mean my job. There's a lot of people who are feeling that sense of insecurity. So it's an important time to be involved in the process. So I appreciate all of you who would take time off of your afternoon to come and hang out and talk politics. We've just been having a great time talking about jobs, talking about education. And then the one extra thing, and particularly since we have two judges here, which I very much appreciate, the one thing that I have been talking about at every stop, in addition to jobs and education, is something that's very dear to me, and that's the area of domestic violence, where we do a good job as a state, but we have the opportunity to really do better. In the field of domestic violence, we have so often folks who are survivors who say, now is the time when I want to make a better life for myself. And if we can do a better job of helping people at that point, then we're gonna see fewer children growing up in an atmosphere where their parents are resolving disputes through violent methods. And we've got enough problems in Southern Illinois in that department, but there are other places in the state, and I've been all over the state. In Chicago, on Monday mornings, the newspaper will have an article about who was killed over the weekend, and it won't be on the front page. And it's just shocking to me that it's not shocking anymore, that there are some parts of the state where violence is so common that it's just expected, that it's not a big deal.
There are the whole reimbursements from counties. They're going to hold income tax much longer than they should be holding it.
Oh, yeah.
And by doing that, they're actually breaking us. And I don't understand. Now they're talking about reducing the reimbursements. They're already not paying us in the future.
Right.
And we can't survive like that.
Yeah.
And now the state is making their problem, which has been overspending, huge pensions, this goes on, our problem.
Yeah. Well, you're exactly right that this is one of the biggest challenges going on, and this is something that the governor has in two budgets now tried to address and tried to get the legislature to come along and say, hey, we've got to, when you look at our budget, we have to make some serious changes. The Chicago Civic Federation, which is not associated with one party or another, said, here's the best way to work on this. You need to engage in pension reform and budget cuts. And if you can do those two, then you need to talk about the possibility of increased revenue. This spring, they did some forward-going pension reform that covers some state employees.
But not all.
But not all. So there's still more that I think we can do. It does, by the way, cover brand new lieutenant governors. Something I should have asked about, right?
Community college professionals.
Right. And the governor's cut $3 billion over the course of the last two budgets. The legislature, by the way, left him holding the bag on that in this last budget and said, here's the money, we won't appropriate it, you just figure out what you want to be responsible for cutting. And he's done that. I think we need to do more in terms of cutting, because the reality is what we've asked counties to do and school districts to do and mental health agencies and domestic violence shelters, you name it, is essentially, and we haven't even asked them, we've just said, essentially you're going to be our lender. We're just not going to pay our bills on time. And none of us could, by the way, get away with that. If we don't pay the power company and say, well, you're just going to have to lump it because we're going to be about 6 to 8 months late on our payments, we know that we will not be receiving power at our house. So that's part of being responsible on the budget, being willing to take those tough stands, being willing to say, okay, we've got to make some hard choices. We're either going to have to do without a lot of the things that we've come to be used to having, or we're going to have to pay more to get those things that we want. The reason why I'm hopeful on all of this is the impact that the late payments to public schools has had across the state. And it's not just been Southern Illinois, it's not just been the city of Chicago, it's the whole state has been really seriously affected by those late school payments. And I think people have a better sense now than they used to of the significance of state dollars. You know, when we pay our real estate taxes, there's a line. I can tell, you know, what's going to the grade school, I can tell what's going to the mosquito abatement district. I know all those things. When we pay our income taxes, we don't have that same sense of where it's going. I think now, as a state, we have a better sense of where that's going and a better sense of what value it is to us. I think we still need to go farther in getting people engaged in a conversation about how do we get to that point where when we say, you know, you're going to get X amount of money as a county, which, by the way, a lot of it comes from your county, right? It's not like it's even our money to hang on to.
That's right.
Yeah, we're collecting the money and saying, yeah, it's your money, but we're just going to keep it for a while. Or pay it out to other people as we're, you know, juggling our checkbook. Anyway, we need to get to a point where we're much more responsible on the state budget, and I think Governor Quinn is willing to step up and make those hard decisions. I think with the increased public awareness of the importance of the state budget, we're going to be able to see some legislators come on board as well. And I'm committed to working with individual members of the House and Senate, one district at a time, to organize support in their districts so that people know if they make those tough decisions, those responsible decisions, they're going to be supported in their district.
With the cutbacks in the teachers. And the last RIP they had here, I know 5 or 6 of those teachers found jobs in adjacent counties, or they went to different states totally. So that's when you say the funding's cut for the schools, you see it firsthand.
Yeah.
My wife and I currently volunteer at the elementary school for lunch to help the kids open packages because they're so short-handed. And once you go in there and see how short-handed they are and the response the kids give you, you want to go back and help.
Yeah.
And it's been an impact on me because when you're talking about class sizes going from anywhere from 28 to 32, and then you see on the news where Indiana, they had a big brouhaha over the class size of 28, and that school board hired another teacher in response to 40 people coming. So when the governor makes these cuts, it impacted a lot of people in this room with the school district, whether with children or grandchildren or people whose sons or daughters lost jobs.
Yeah.
And on the domestic violence issues, for the women or the men to get in the process and be a victim and have somewhere to go, someone has to answer the original call. And what Sheila Ritter was getting at is the doors are going to close. We won't have any deputy sheriffs, and then it'll just trickle down to where the cities will be in a bind, and nobody will be there to assist the people with their help to get them to the shelter. So that's what you see firsthand when the economy's cut like this.
Exactly. And in an odd way, the more people have that realization, the more I think we're willing to step up and say, okay, we do need to do something about our budget. Let's do it now. And ways, absolutely. I mean, any place where there's a place that can be cut is obviously a good, easy target. And the problem is there's not, that they don't have, you know, flags on them, or it's, you know, schools don't have a line item for waste and abuse that you can say, okay, this year we won't be spending money on waste. But, yeah, exactly. But where there are places to cut.